By the time he knelt, the city had learned how to hold its breath. You don't notice it at first. When you live Heartbreak, the evening traffic hushes just enough between light cycles that you can hear your own pulse. The distant saxophone from a balcony 3 blocks away, the whisper of wind sliding between glass towers like it's telling a secret. I noticed that night. I noticed everything cause he had made sure I would. Rafe always curated moments. A week before, he casually asked what kind of rooftop I liked. Industrial or romantic? He'd said, tasting the words like wine. I told him I liked the kind where the concrete still remembered summer heat and the railing was warm against your forearms. I said I liked the kind where the city felt close enough to touch, where the street lamps were low stars and the nearest cloud were the color of street vendors' steam. He found a rooftop that was both. The tallest hotel in the district had a terrace tucked above its restaurant, a rectangle of string lights and potted olive trees. He made a reservation for 2, and somehow because Rafe had a way of talking to hosts like they were old friends, secured access to the private space after dessert. A violinist materialized near the door, as if he'd been waiting there all night for his cue. A staff member I'd never met handed me a thin shawl, one of those theatrical gestures that make a moment feel staged and expensive. Cold? Rafe asked, even though I wasn't. He put his hand at my back and guided me to the edge of the terrace. The skyline opened like a mouth full of gold teeth. He had been nervous during dinner. It felt it in the way he didn't finish his wine, in the way he kept checking his phone under the table, a glance glow slide that didn't match the candlelight. It made me feel like there was a third person at the table, someone behind the black mirror, who had as much claim on his attention as I did. It bothered me, and then it didn't, because when Rafe looked at me his face went unguarded in a way that made other women stare. I liked the power of that. I liked thinking it was for me. The waiter had brought a chocolate torte with a smear of raspberry that looked like a kiss turned sideways. A tiny sparkler shivered out, a festive fizz that made 3 other tables applaud because applause is contagious. I thought the sparkler was the climax, the sweet showy flourish of a man who liked shiny things. Then the terrace, the violinist shifting into a song I recognized from late-night playlists labeled Slow Burn. The air smelled like rain and citrus cleaner. Rafe coughed once like he was clearing a path for the words. He went down on one knee. The box was small and black and new enough to squeak at the hinge. The ring inside was a halo of white stones around a center that flashed like something not meant for mortal fingers. "Marry me," he said. "Lena." Hearing my name in that moment felt like stepping into a dress you didn't know would fit you perfectly. My vision went soft at the edges. My chest hurt. I could hear the violinist, the city, the applause rising from a table of tourists who would tell this story later. We saw a proposal in New City. The girl cried. The ring was huge. I did cry. That's the truth. I cried because it stepped into a life that looked like an open door with warm light beyond it. My yes surprised me by how natural it sounded, like a word I'd been saving for when the story asked for it. He slid the ring onto my finger. He stood and kissed me, and the applause on the terrace swelled. And in that moment I wasn't thinking about the other times I'd learned what it cost to want something. I wasn't thinking about the sealed bone of a heartbreak from 2 years ago, or how my mother used to say, "People will show you who they are in how they celebrate you." I was a girl with a ring and a city at her feet, and a man who knew how to build a scene. Later, I would replay that kiss and the seconds around it so many times that it would splinter into frames like an old film. I would find the moment where he opened his eyes before I did, not to look at me, but past me. I would freeze him there, eyelashes wet, gaze angled over my shoulder at the door to the terrace. I would find that one flicker of attention and hold it up like evidence. But that night, it was just a flicker, a hiccup of light, not enough to call by name. The hotel manager brought champagne. The cork popped, the violinist bowed. Rafe thanked everyone like he was directing the end of a play. He had that talent, could make strangers feel recruited into his life. He'd done it with me at the beginning, when we met at a mutual friend's art show, and he convinced the bartender to invent a cocktail named after the exhibit. He'd done it again at the farmer's market, where he'd introduced himself to every vendor like he'd been shopping there for years. Community, he'd said, the word grinning in his mouth. We clinked glasses. To us, he said, and I saw in his eyes a heat that read to me like love. Us, I said, and the ring ached as if it had its own small heartbeat. We stayed on the terrace after the violinist left. Rafe took a photo of the ring on my hand against the glow of the skyline. Then he took another and another, instructing me to tip my wrist, relax my fingers, turn just a little so the light hit the facet like that. He had always been particular about images, a fact he'd chalked up to his job. Ran brand campaigns for tech startups, and his brain had been trained to croon to algorithms. He understood what a grid wanted. He understood how to choreograph an authentic moment so it performed well at noon on a Tuesday. "Okay," he said finally, after 7 shots. "Now one of us." He set his phone on the railing, propped against a folded linen napkin like a tripod, and started a timer. He pulled me in. Our faces touched. His jaw was so close I could count the whiskers that had escaped his shave, the one tiny scar that cut his eyebrow like a hyphen. The timer blinked, 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 and then captured us smiling with our teeth like we were trying to be the kind of couple that deserved teeth. He looked at the photo, and his whole face pleased itself. Perfect, he said. Wait to post until tomorrow, I said, suddenly shy of letting the world press its face up against ours. He smiled like he was indulging me. Of course. We left the terrace at 11. The elevator was a silver box with a mirror that made us look richer and more in love than we were. Rafe kissed my cheek in the mirror, and we laughed at the double of us. On the way down, my phone buzzed with messages I had not yet told anyone to send. It was eerie, the way good news traveled through air. In the lobby, a woman with copper hair and a dress that clung like it was in on a secret swept past us with a clutch under her arm. She and Rafe didn't look at each other. Or they did, but only the minimum that people do when they share a lobby at the same time. I remember this because later, when I tried to craft a reason for a feeling, I searched for where it started and found her moving like a red thread through a blue night. We spilled into the city with its after-hours neon and hot dog steam and taxi horns. I felt tall. I felt chosen. I felt like an advertisement for something you couldn't really buy, which is to say I felt like a lie I wanted to keep living inside. Rafe hailed a car and told the driver my address, and then, like a gentleman from another time, he asked if he could stay the night. Of course he could. I wanted him there to see who I was when I was soft and unperformed. I wanted him there to watch me hold my hand out in the bathroom, light, and practice asking, "Can I have a bagel? I'm engaged to nobody." I wanted to wake up next to the man who had made me feel like the future finally stopped moving long enough to be touched. At my apartment, we fell into my couch, both laughing, the laughter doing the work of disbelief. Rafe opened my window to let the city air in and sat on the sill like he owned it. Sometimes Rafe perched on the world. He took his phone out in it to post. He promised, just to text his mother, and his screen lit his face in cold light. My own phone exploded on the coffee table, Ari with 12 heart emojis, my cousin Nur demanding FaceTime at once, my coworker Jaya sending a voice note. That was mostly a scream. The ring, warm now from my skin, through constellations on the ceiling, when the streetlight reached for it through the curtains. I watched him text. His mouth did a small satisfied thing at one corner. The same corner curled when he flirted with waiters, when he negotiated a rate, when he knew he had caught and held a gaze. Tell me something true, I said, because it was the kind of thing you say when the night feels like trying to be a poem. He didn't look up. I've never been more sure, he said. Of me? Of us. He tucked his phone under his thigh like he had to trap it to keep from floating away. I wanted to ask him who he had been less sure of. Ghosts crowded the space behind his certain tie, but I was tired and almost drunk, and my eyes kept wanting to live inside the ring. So I went to the kitchen and spilled 2 glasses of water and added lemon slices like a punchline to the champagne. When I came back, he had picked his phone up again. We slept. He curled around me, and I fell so fast I didn't even feel the moment where the night turned, where a decision elsewhere started walking toward us. Morning happened in 3 movements, light blooming around the edges of my curtains, the sound of a street cleaner below dragging the city's dirt into neat lands, and the soft ping of a phone notification that didn't belong to me. Rafe reached for it. His hand hesitated, a flinch I felt even under the blanket. He sat up, thumbed the screen awake, and went still in the glow. I propped myself on an elbow. The ring sparkled like it had slept better than I had. Everything okay? I asked. He turned the phone face down and smiled, sleep heavy and bright. My mother, he said. She used too many exclamation points. I love it. He left mid-morning to grab us coffee, which made me laugh because there was coffee in my kitchen and he knew it. When the door clicked shut, I spent a long trying to take a picture of the ring that looked like the picture of the ring had looked on the terrace. I kept failing. The light in my apartment is honest. It tells the truth about dust and the way white walls yellow into their 30s. I wanted the lie against gold filter, the violin sound. I wanted the moment to look like itself. I posted anyway. A picture of our hands, mine on top, the ring centered like an eye. I said yes with a blushing face, and a sparkles emoji I always felt silly using. My phone buzzed in a way that felt like it had caught fire. When Rafe came back, he had coffee and a paper bag with 2 croissants and the calm of a man who had done everything right. He set them down and kissed me and tapped my phone with 1 finger. Can I repost? He asked, playful, pretending he wasn't starving. Or is it too soon for the public? Do it, I said, laughing, high on sunglasses, hearts drifting up my screen. Now we're real, he said, and kissed the top of my head as if to press the seal of there into my hair. The notifications went feral. Friends, coworkers, acquaintances who only knew us through window glass of social media, all showing up with confetti. My mother called. I put her on speaker and we both cried. She asked if he was there and I handed him the phone. And Rafe did the thing he could do where he charmed a person who could smell least cows. My mother had worked a checkout line for 27 years and knew the library of faces people brought to the register. By noon, a comment sat at the top of Rafe's post that I had to tilt my head to read differently than how I read it. It was a single red heart from a username I recognized because my stomach recognized it before my brain did. Olivia. Rose. Olivia. The ex whose name had been in the stories his friends told with a shrug. They were a thing, Jay had said once, when we ran into Rafe's college friends at a bar. A long thing. Shed said it like you say storm. It was big, it made a mess, and then people moved on. I knew almost nothing about Olivia beyond the broad strokes. She worked in design. She had a dog that wore bandanas. Her eyebrows could cut paper. Rafe did not talk about Olivia, a person who learned at 23 that questions, asked too early, sound like accusations did not ask. What lived in the space where Olivia might have been discussed was a set of careful silences we both kept like fine china. Her heart beat at the top of his comment section. The algorithm pinned it there, the way blood blooms through white. It was nothing. It was everything. Rafe saw it because he saw everything on his posts. He moved past it like he was flipping through a magazine. I saw him see it, and I watched his face do a small thing that did not quite qualify as anything at all, a molecule of change. A single pixel going from black to blue. She follows you? I asked light. Mutuals, he said lighter. You know how this city is. 3 degrees and an elevator. It's fine, I said. It's just a heart. It's just a heart, he repeated, his voice gentle, like he was giving me my line back so I could keep believing it. We went ring shopping that afternoon, not to replace it, God no, but to resize it. To learn the language of jewelers and metals and what carat meant beyond a bride. Rafe wanted to know if they could polish the prongs to catch the light cleaner. He spoke with the saleswoman like he consulted on projects for Tiffany. And she humored him because he was polite and tall, and dressed in a way that said he knew his fabrics. I let them talk while I watched the ring under different lamps. Under warm light, it looked like champagne. Under cool light, it looked like an ice cube you weren't supposed to touch. Under store light, it looked like it belonged to somebody who gets photographed in magazines accidentally. On the walk home, we passed 3 strangers who said congratulations and one who said lucky, without specifying who was supposed to feel it. We stopped at a fruit stand and Rafe bought cherries and then made a show of tying a stem in a knot with his tongue because once, months ago, it said that impressed me in an old movie. He remembered everything I said. It made me feel both seen and cataloged. At dusk, after my mother texted photos of bridal magazines stacked like a cathedral on her coffee table, and after Nur asked if she could plan my bachelorette even though we both hate bar crawls, and after Jay sent a link to a wedding planner whose website looked like a cloud swallowed a calendar, I lay back on my bed and stared at the ceiling and let it all rain down. Rafe stretched out beside me, scrolling. His thumb flicked up, up, up. Every so often, he bit his bottom lip gently, like he was editing a thought. What are you thinking? I asked because I hate silence when it feels like someone turned the sound off on purpose. That I want to do this right, he said. That I want to make you happy. He meant it. I could feel that he meant it. That's the part of the story I will go to court for. He wanted me happy, and he wanted me photographed while I was. We ordered Thai and ate on the floor, and the lemongrass and basil made the whole apartment smell like memory. We watched a show about chefs screaming, and Rafe made jokes about how he could never trust anyone who plates with tweezers. We kissed with the taste of coconut milk between us, and when he fell asleep early with his arm across his eyes, I sat up in the dark and scrolled both our posts until the numbers blurred. I clicked on the little red heart at the top because I could not click. I went to her page. I told myself I was only looking because she came to us first. Because she had placed herself in our house by pressing her finger to a glass heart. I told myself I was a scientist gathering facts. Olivia's grid was a study in restraint. Neutrals, shadows, textural close-ups of linen and stone, and the back of a chair under morning light. A dog with a face like it was amused by humans. Her face appeared rarely, and when it did, it was never soft. A mirror selfie in a studio with plants. A shot of her at a gallery opening, profile sharp enough to be dangerous. Her captions were small and clean, hush, paper cut quite Joey. I scrolled back and found the end of Rafe and her squares the way you find the end of a song, the place where the echo stops. There was a gap 2 months wide where you could imagine a life being dismantled and boxed. The last photo before the gap was a blush pink wall with a shadow of a hand, and the words "It won't be me next time" in the caption. I read that for times my heartbeat thudding in my ears like someone was answering a door too slowly. I told myself it was about a dress she didn't buy. I told myself it was about a plant she killed. I told myself it was not a message sent through 2 months and a city to land in my lap like a bird that chose me. I closed the app. I breathed. I put the phone face down. The phone buzzed. I told myself not to look. I told myself looking would make me a kind of person. I had promised myself I wasn't any more of kind who stands in the burnt-down house of past relationships and names. The ashes. I looked. A private message notification. From Olivia. Rose. No words yet, just the preview banner. Her handle bold. The first 3 pixels of a photo in the chat bubble teasing like a curtain lifting. My mouth went dry enough to make a sound when I swallowed. Rafe slept, forearm across his eyes, mouth slack in the unhandsome way people are when they aren't performing. I watched the banner fade and then opened the message anyway, because I have always been braver in the wrong direction. The photo loaded slow, like old internet. When it resolved, it was nothing I could have prepared a face for. It was a picture of the ring on my hand. Not the one I had posted, but the one Rafe had taken on the traced draft, the angle where my wrist looked awkward and the skyline sliced my knuckles. The one he hadn't shared. Her message under it, tell me you know. The room tilted. I read it again, then a third time as if repetition could write a different sentence. I looked at Rafe. I looked at my hand. I typed nothing. I typed everything and deleted it. The little typing bubble appeared under her message even though I wasn't typing because my thumb had hovered too long over the field. And then I hit the power button to make the whole screen go black. Rafe moved and murmured my name without waking. He said it like a man who had learned how to say it in his sleep. I lay back down and placed my hand with the ring against my chest and stared at the ceiling where city light made patterns. My heart knocked against the stone, like it wanted in. The night, which had started with a violin and a yes, ended with a question mark glowing in a speech bubble that looked like a threat. I did not sleep. I listened to Rafe breathe and the city correct itself and my phone, dark and heavy on the nightstand, like a mouth waiting to open. At 3:17 a.m., the screen lit my room from the inside. Another message from her. 4 words. He needed an audience. I didn't answer. I didn't wake him. I just lay there, suddenly aware of the way his body curved around mine like a parenthesis, opening and closing around a sentence I hadn't agreed to say. By morning, my post had 15,000 likes. His had 23. My mother had texted me a list of venues with the word ballroom in them. Rafe woke with a kiss for my shoulder and the softness of someone who believed a night was a straight line from one good thing to another. He reached for his phone the way you touch a talisman. I reached for mine too. The messages from Olivia sat there like a bruise you can't cover, like a secret that grows teeth in the dark. I opened them again because I wanted the words to mean something else in the daylight. They didn't. The last message, sent at 5:02 a.m., must have found us both asleep for the first fragile hour. Congrats, she wrote. I hope you get what he wanted. What he wanted, I said out loud before I could stop the words. Rafe, in the bathroom, ran the faucet and sang a line from a song I didn't know as a person could try and make a morning normal. I wished, suddenly and violently, for the kind of ignorance that stays. I wished for the version of last night where a heart is just a heart and an ex is a ghost that never learns how to text. Instead I got this, the ring like a lighthouse on my finger, the city outside arranging itself into something that could hold a storm, and a message from a stranger who knew how to strike a match. I put the phone face down again, a superstition. Rafe came out, kissed my forehead, and grinned at my ring like it was a trick he couldn't believe he'd pulled off. Ready to tell the world? He asked. I smiled. I nodded. I said yes. But when he turned to the mirror to fix his hair, I turned the phone over and opened the message thread and typed. My hand steady in a way that made me think of knives. What do you think I don't know? I sent it. I watched the 3 dots bloom like a heartbeat. And I realized, as the answer began to arrive, that the city hadn't been holding its breath last night for romance. It had been bracing. The 3 dots pulsed like they were breathing. It was almost worse than the message itself, watching those gray circles swell and collapse, as if the phone was inhaling for her. Then they stopped. No reply. Just the absence, hanging there like a wet coat I didn't ask to wear. I stared at the empty chat until Rafe's reflection appeared in my screen. He leaned over my shoulder, warm from the shower, smelling like my soap. "What's that?" he asked too casually. I tilted the phone so he couldn't see, which was answer enough. "Just Nur," I lied. I was suddenly grateful for how often Nur texted me at ungodly hours. It made a perfect cover for conversations I couldn't explain. He kissed my temple. "Tell her I said she's not stealing you for the bachelorette. I'm claiming that weekend for us." I forced a laugh, and the dots stayed gone. Days that followed were an odd mix of euphoria and else. Something I didn't have the courage to name yet. Publicly, we were a hit. His post and mine got reshared by people I barely knew. My aunt called from Boston to tell me she approved as if I were a property sale. My coworkers printed my ring photo and taped it to my desk like a shrine. Even my building's doorman, who never looked up from his crossword, said, "Congrats," without looking at me, which felt like a miracle. Privately, Rafe was distracted. He worked later than usual. Not the kind of late where he came home bleary-eyed and apologetic, but the kind where he arrived buzzing, phone in hand, smiling at something I wasn't part of. We'd sit on the couch, me with a book one wasn't reading, him with his thumb flicking through his screen. Sometimes he'd show me a meme or a video from a friend. Sometimes he'd laugh to himself and say, "Work stuff," without elaborating. I didn't push. My mother always told me, "Pick your battles, Lena. Don't fire every bullet you've got." But this didn't feel like a battle. It felt like a leak, quiet, steady, invisible until the floor rotted through. The first time I caught him smiling at his phone, I asked, "What's funny?" "Inside joke," he said. "You wouldn't get it?" The second time, I didn't ask. The third time, I asked again. He looked at me too long before answering, the way someone looks at a door before deciding whether to open it. A week after the proposal, I posted a picture of us at brunch, me in a sundress, him in a white shirt rolled at the sleeves. In the photo, he's looking at me like I'm telling the best story in the world. The caption was simple, "Still can't believe it." It took 2 minutes for the first comment to come in. From her, a single champagne glass emoji. I didn't tell him right away. Instead, I clicked her profile again. This time, the newest photo was a close-up of a record player spinning a vinyl. The caption read, "Some songs age well." Minutes later, I brought it up. "Do you talk to Olivia?" I asked, keeping my voice light, almost bored. He didn't flinch. That was worse. "Not really. Not really or no. She's in the circle, Lena. She's friends with people I'm friends with. We cross paths online. That's all." That champagne emoji was just a champagne emoji, he said, cutting me off. "You're reading too much into it." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to let the conversation end there. But the image of her holding my ring photo in part 1 kept needling me. She knew something. And if she knew, that meant there was something to know. The next morning, Rafe suggested we take engagement photos. Not for invites or anything. Just for us. For memories. It sounded sweet, and maybe it was. But when we met the photographer, a friend of his from the scene, one realized it wasn't about memories at all. It was about the gallery. Rafe directed the shoot more than the photographer did. He chose the backgrounds, adjusted my posture, made me laugh more naturally. At one point, he stopped the session entirely to check the shots on her camera. "These need to feel authentic," he said. "Candid but polished." By the time we wrapped, I wasn't sure whether I'd been engaged to a man or cast in a campaign. That night, while he was in the shower, I opened his laptop. It wasn't locked. That almost made me feel guilty, like if he trusted me, I shouldn't break that trust. But I opened his browser history anyway. There it was, her profile. Multiple times. Late at night. Sometimes minutes before he posted something of us. I closed the laptop when I heard the water shut off. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The message came on a Wednesday night. I'd gone to bed early. Rafe was still in the living room watching something on his laptop. At 12:14 am, my phone lit up on the nightstand. It was Olivia. This time, she didn't bother with preamble. "Is using you. No emojis. No conus. Just for words heavy enough to wake me completely." I stared at them, pulse thudding in my ears. My first instinct was to delete them, as if erasing the words would erase the meaning. Instead, I typed back, "Explain." The dots appeared almost instantly. "He wanted to hurt me. That's all this is. You're the proof he can." I didn't reply. Not because I believed her, but because I couldn't trust what I might say next. When Rafe came to bed an hour later, I pretended to be asleep. I felt him slide in beside me, felt his arm curl around my waist. I didn't move, but my breathing changed, not enough for him to notice. Just enough for me to realize how wrong it felt to fake sleep next to the man I was supposed to marry. The next morning, I tried to shake it off. We had breakfast together. He kissed my forehead before leaving for work. Everything looked normal. But that night, I did something I'd never done before. I went through his phone. It wasn't easy, not because I didn't know his passcode, I did, but because of what it meant. Crossing that line. Becoming the kind of person who checks. I told myself I was doing it to prove Olivia wrong. Instead, I proved her right. In his messages, buried under group chats and work threads, I found her name. No hearts. No pet names. Nothing overtly romantic. But the timestamps told a story every few days, a short exchange. And then I saw it. A message from 3 hours before he proposed to me. "Rafe, watch this space. Olivia, pathetic. Rafe, you'll see." I closed the phone, my hands trembling. My throat felt tight, like it swallowed something sharp. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting the hours until I could confront him. But in the morning, when he woke up smiling and kissed me like nothing was wrong, the words died in my throat. Instead, I started keeping a file. Screenshots of her messages. His messages. A private folder on my laptop labeled "Missed," the kind of name no one clicks on. If he was going to play games, it'd make sure I knew all the rules before I flipped the board. 1 week later, I got the final piece. A mutual acquaintance, a friend of a friend named Donnie, messaged me out of the blue. "Donnie, hey, I don't know how close you and Olivia are, but I thought you should know she's been telling people the proposal wasn't real. My fingers went cold. Me, what do you mean not real? Donnie, like it's for show? She says he only did it to prove a point. I don't know the details, but it's ugly. I didn't need the details. I had them already in screenshots, in her champagne emoji, in that one cruel thread from ours before he knelt on the rooftop. I stared at my engagement ring that night and realized it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt hollow. Night I confronted Rafe. The city felt wrong. Not storm wrong, not danger wrong. Just rearranged. The air was too still. The traffic sounded like it was coming from somewhere far away, as if the streets themselves were holding their breath. I walked home from the subway slower than usual, my phone heavy in my pocket, the screenshots heavier in my mind. It decided that morning. I wasn't going to play this out like some drawn-out soap opera. No quiet resentment, no waiting for the right moment. There's never a right moment to find out the man you're marrying used you as a weapon. When I opened the apartment door, Rafe was in the kitchen slicing limes. Tequila night? I asked, leaning against the frame. He smiled over his shoulder. I thought we could celebrate. I closed the Ventura deal. I didn't smile back. Celebrate what, exactly? The deal, or the proposal? His knife paused mid-slice. Both, I guess. Why? I stepped in, set my bag down, and took my phone from my pocket. My hand didn't shake, which surprised me, given that my heart was hammering hard enough to make my ears ring. I'm going to ask you something, I said. And I want the truth. No marketing spin. No brand voice. Just the truth. Okay, he turned toward me, knife still in his hand, the limes bleeding onto the cutting board. Did you propose to me to get back at Olivia? The pause was everything. A full 3 seconds where the air between us solidified. His eyes flicked not away, not down, but into some middle distance where answers get built. What? He said finally, almost laughing. Where is this coming from? From her, I said. From your messages to her. From 3 hours before the rooftop, when you told her watch this space. His face didn't crack, but it shifted. Like he'd just realized I wasn't bluffing. You went through my phone? He asked voice low. You went through my life, I shot back. He set the knife down slowly, the way you do when you're trying not to spook someone. It's not what you think. Really? I pulled the phone out, opened the folder, held the screen toward him. Because it looks exactly like what I think. He didn't even look at it. Lena, you're making this bigger than it is. I laughed, the kind of laugh that feels like it might cut your throat on the way out. Bigger than you proposing to me for revenge. How much bigger can it get? I didn't propose for revenge. I proposed because he stopped, choosing his words. Because I realized she didn't matter anymore. You do. Funny, I said. You realized that the same day you decided to put on a show big enough for her to see. That's not fair. Fair? My voice rose. You used me like a prop in some twisted performance. And you didn't even tell me. You let me think it was about us. About love. It is about love, he said, stepping toward me. Yes, I wanted her to see I was happy. Yes, maybe part of me wanted to hurt her. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. The word maybe was the nail in the coffin. If there was a maybe, then there was a yes. And I wasn't interested in living inside a marriage with that kind of ghost. Do you even hear yourself? I asked. You're admitting you proposed with her in mind. I had you in mind too, he said, almost pleading. You think I planned every detail just for her? The terrace, the lights, the photographer, that was for you. No, I said, my voice going cold. That was for the audience. He flinched, just slightly, and that was when I knew Olivia's last message, he needed an audience, had been the truest thing in this whole mess. Say it, I told him. Say you wanted her to see it. Say that was part of the plan. His jaw tightened. It was part of the plan. There it was, the confession, flat, heavy, irrefutable. The silence after that felt like standing in a room after the chandelier falls sharp, glittering debris everywhere, nothing left to hold the light. I took off the ring, not dramatically, not like in the movies, just quietly slid it off my finger and set it on the counter between the lines. Lena, no, I said. You don't get to Lena me right now. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. You've been curating this relationship like it's a feed. And maybe that works for you, maybe you need likes and comments to feel something's real. But I don't. I don't need an audience to be in love. He didn't follow when I went to the bedroom to grab my coat. He didn't stop me at the door. He just stood there, hands on the counter, the ring between us like a spotlight that had burned out. I didn't know where I was going when I left. The streets felt too big, the city too loud. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Olivia, again, but I didn't look. I walked until my legs hurt, until the air stung my cheeks, until I was far enough away that I couldn't picture the exact shade of his kitchen tiles. That night, I slept at Noor's. She didn't ask questions at first. She just made tea and handed me a blanket. When I finally told her everything, she said, "He doesn't deserve to have his story end with you." And I realized she was right. The ending wasn't his to write. I didn't go back to the apartment for 3 days. In that time, the texts from Rafe piled up. We need to talk, please call me, I love you. I ignored them. I needed space to figure out whether I was leaving because of what he'd done, or because of who he was when he did it. By the fourth morning, I knew it didn't matter. The answer was the same. I went back on a Sunday afternoon, when I knew he'd be home. He opened the door like he'd been rehearsing it, relief in his eyes, arms half lifted as if a hug might erase everything. I didn't step inside. I handed him a small velvet box. Inside was the ring. "I'm giving this back," I said. "Not because I don't want to be married someday, but because I won't marry a man who needed an audience to love me." "Lena, you don't get to explain again," I cut in. "I believe you loved me. I also believe you loved the idea of her seeing you love me. And those two things, they can't live in the same house." Tried again to step forward, but I stayed in the doorway. My voice didn't shake. "You wanted to win, Rafe. You wanted her to feel like she lost. Maybe she did, but so did you." For a moment, I saw the fight drain out of him. Not sadness, not really. More like he was realizing the crowd he'd been performing for had gone home. I turned to leave. He called my name once, soft, like he thought volume could change my mind. At the end of the hall, I pulled out my phone. Olivia's message thread was still there. I typed one last thing. "Me. He got his audience. Now the show's over." I hit send, then deleted the entire conversation. That night, I stayed at Noor's again. We ordered cheap pizza and watched terrible reality TV, and for the first time in weeks my laughter didn't feel staged. I thought about the rooftop, the fairy lights, the champagne, the ring catching the skyline, and realized I could still keep that memory. It didn't have to belong to him. It could just be the night I said yes to what I thought was love, and the day I learned how to say no to what wasn't.